record button. So we are recording now, and more people will be popping in. People always pop in, up till 5 for the first 5 minutes, but we can use this time to for introductions. So welcome everyone. We're recording this call. I'm Edwin Rutsch, Director of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, and this is our introduction to the Empathy Circle practice. The Empathy Circle, I find, is one of the most effective first step gateway practices for fostering learning empathy and listening skills. So really excited to be able to be here to show you all how to do this. We have a bunch of facilitators who have ECF after their name. They're experienced in the practice. And the outline of what we're going to do today is we're going to have a little bit of participant introductions very quickly. We're going to review the training that we have available and show how to do an empathy circle. And then we're going to go into an empathy circle, and we're going to go for about 2 hours in total. And we'll be coming back in the last 20 minutes or so after we do our breakout rooms to have a little debrief. So as mentioned, I'm Edwin Rutsch, Director of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, and I'm located here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I've been working for about 14 years on trying to build a more empathic society. And so that's me. And we want to go around. I'm going to put this into the chat. So we're going to take about 30 seconds each. If you can introduce yourself and share what your interest is in attending today. And Bill, do you want to start and then call on people?
Sure. My name is Bill Phil. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm a retired special education teacher, where I learned the importance of empathic dialogue with my students. And I've been working with Edwin for, I guess, about 5 years now. I've been doing the training since we've been doing it all since March of 2020. I'm all in on building a culture of empathy. Thanks. Lou?
I'm Lou Zweier. I'm also in the North Bay and have a background in leadership and conflict resolution and communication. And I've been working with Edwin also for about 5 years, and I worked with Bill and Edwin to help develop the training, the facilitator training. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of my life's mission to try to create more understanding or between people and have a more empathic society. And the Empathy Circle is a great practice for doing that.
Great. Larry?
I am Larry in Florida. I'm a retired occupational therapist. I love these empathy circles, and I'm just thinking I'm practically brand new to them because empathy is always in the now. Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. Gabby?
Hey everyone, I'm Gabby. I'm based in Italy, but I'm from Brazil. And doing these empathy circles, I feel so connected to life and to myself and to people. And it's one of the best first step for experiencing empathy. So that's why I'm also here today.
Thank you, Gabby. Celine?
I live in the United States on the West Coast, where it's heating up now in Oregon. And I have been part of this group for a couple of years. My background is in education, mediation, nonviolent communication, and I love the empathy circles. It's a great practice.
Thanks, Celine. Mervyn?
Hi, I'm Mervyn from London, UK. I've got a background mainly in sort of NVC, kind of empathy circles, and I also do some voluntary work in London with a different kind of empathy group. I haven't done this type of empathy work before, but I'm quite curious of its potential in different ways, mainly for teaching purposes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mervyn. Dwayne?
Hi, my name is Dwayne Hearn. I'm located in Las Vegas, Nevada, where it's always hot in the summer. And my interest in empathy circles is that it aligns with my purpose for the rest of my life, and that's contributing something positive to the world that I'm living in. And I think learning to be more empathetic, learning to listen deeply, to really listen to people is one of the ways that I can contribute positively to the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. Graham?
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, I'm Graham. I'm from Windsor in Ontario, and it's geographically just across the river from Detroit, south of Detroit. And I've been doing these empathy circles for 2 years, and it's also a life's mission of mine, like Dwayne. And yeah, there are lots of purposes behind it. Connections with anybody that I talk to, being able to enhance the living, my standard of living, and maybe just sort of help other people. But there's a life's mission for sure. And I look forward to today. It's going to be fun. Thank you.
Thanks, Graham. Michelle?
Hello, I'm Michelle, and I'm just dialing in from Galway in Ireland. And I think I became a disciple of Edwin's about 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah. And it was just, I was really, at the time, I was really grateful for it. I feel like it's like the kind of common, like it's the thing that's going to solve all of the, like across all of the kind of global challenges that we have today, whether it be around emotional well-being, across like the divides culturally, the polarizations, the way countries are going towards each other, like everything that we're seeing that's like unwell in our society today. There's this kind of common cure around empathy. So I really believe in what the movement's trying to achieve. So I really feel really blessed to have it as part of my life.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. Always great to see you. Anne?
Hi, I'm Anne Jordan. I'm in the southwest of England. I'm part of the Empathy Circle movement as well, and one of the trainers. I'd really believe too that this is something that could really help us shift in our cultures and in the world, and to make the changes that we so desperately need. And I'm glad you're all here, and looking forward to interacting with you this evening.
Great. Thank you, Anne. Ellen?
Hi, I'm Ellen. I'm in New Jersey. I started doing deep listening with deep adaptation a year ago, and it really changed my life. And so I've been doing that, and I've been facilitating those. And then I did one empathy circle with Larry. I did one with Anne. Then I came across this one, so I decided to do it. So thank you.
Great. Great to have you. Zafnat?
Yeah, hi. Hi, everyone. I am from Portland, Oregon, but currently in Israel, where I was born. I am a social psychologist. My research and practice focus on restructuring our relationships, very challenging in a Western individualist culture. It's really going against the stream. So I do research conflict transformation from a relational point of view, in DEIB work, particularly inclusive leadership. The reason I actually was one of the national team in Israel, one member of the national team who introduced restorative justice in the country. And I did then listening circles. And I would be curious to know what you think about the difference between peacemaking circles, listening circles, empathy circles. I would be interested in that. I'm working with a Quakers community in Washington State, and doing transformative processes with them, and we are going to use peacemaking circles now, and I haven't done it for a few years now, so I'm looking forward to work with you now. Thank you.
Well, great to have you and everything you bring to us. So we really appreciate it. Thank you. Melissa.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Melissa Gonzalez. I am in Boston, Massachusetts in the USA. I'm completely new to empathy circles. I was very curious because I am the deputy director of a local nonprofit called Everyday Boston, and we connect people across differences through the sharing of life stories is what we do. And so, and before that, I spent about 10 years doing a lot of work on organizational development with nonprofits and doing a lot of facilitation. So I'm really here to learn. I was really curious, and I'm looking forward to learning more about it.
Yeah. Well, welcome. Great to have you. Tiffany.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tiffany. I'm in Kansas City, Missouri. I started coming to the empathy circles last summer, and I've gained a lot of great insight. It's just good to be back.
Great to have you back, Tiffany. Okay. Alexandria.
Hi, I'm Alexandria. I'm in Fort Collins, Colorado. I'm a master's social work student at Colorado State University, and I'm currently an intern for the Center for Public Deliberation with Martine Carcassonne. And my interest in this is learning how to take empathy circles and integrate it into our deliberative practice at the CPD.
You're muted, Bill.
Sorry, there was a little bit of echo in your yeah, so I don't know. Well, anyway, we could understand you though. Thank you. Cesar.
Hi, everyone. I'm Caesar. This is my first time, and I'm new to empathy circles, but I'm also from the Center for Public Deliberation here at CSU under Martine and Dr. Knobloch. But yeah, I'm just interested to learn. And and then for my program, I'm in the Master's in Public Policy and Administration here.
Great. Thank you, Caesar. And Eva Nocturno, but I'm sure I'm butchering your name, so please correct me.
It's fine. My name is Yeva Nocturno. I am calling in from Washington, D.C. I am new to Empathy Circle, so I'm here to learn from all of you. Thank you.
Great to have you here, and thanks for your forbearance for my poor pronunciation. Deb, that I can pronounce.
Hi, everyone. From Laramie, Wyoming, so just an hour north of a couple of you who are in Fort Collins. I work as a facilitator and a trainer and a coach, a lot in conservation and natural resource conflicts, and I also help teams deal with internal strife. And I'm totally new to empathy circles, although I work with empathy a lot. And so I'm really excited to learn more about how I can use this approach to help communities I work with.
Great, thanks. Great to have you here, Deb. Michael, or Michelle, I'm sorry.
If you mean me, I'm Michael. Yes, thank you. I'm Michael Kokonas from Columbus, Ohio. Okay. I am new to empathy circles, but not the Center for Nonviolent Communication relies heavily on aspects of empathy, and we always sit in a circle, so maybe it's similar. But and a lot of things we do in social work, we also sit in circles, though I do think sometimes sitting in squares or triangles might be good for us once in a while. But anyway, thanks so much for having us, and I appreciate introductions.
Well, thanks for coming, and thanks for your flexibility. All right, Claudia.
Hi, I'm Claudia. I work at an art and science museum in South Texas, and I'm a dialogue and deliberation fellow with the Association of Science and Technology Centers. So I'm just here to learn.
Great, great, welcome. Sally.
Hi, my name's Sally Rodman. I live near Yosemite National Park in California. I retired recently from the state of California, Caltrans as an associate transportation planner. And I've been working on a empathy game for children and with Bill Filler, and hoping to get some more participants in the help.
Great, thanks. And I hope you're, it's not too smoky there. Sally's near a big fire right now.
Yesterday was bad, but today is better. It's
Good.
more dispersed.
Good. And Katie.
Hi, I'm Katie Weaver. I'm in Livingston, Montana, with Montana State University Extension, a statewide appointment, and just new to this and really trying to help our faculty across the state wade into pretty challenging conversations these days. Thanks.
Thanks. Welcome. All right, Edwin.
Okay, thanks, Bill. So we're going to be practicing the empathy circle process. It's before we do that, I wanted to mention we do have a training. We have a 5-week facilitator training that starts actually August 6th on Saturday. And you're up again, Bill, for just want to give a quick screen share of
Sure,
that.
we'll do. All right, here we go. And what I got here, sorry. What? Sorry. All right.
There you go.
Yeah, I know it just didn't go back. Oh yeah. Sorry about this. I'm having a problem. Yeah, but I'll get there. All right, there it is. There it is. Okay. No. Oh, how embarrassing. All right. Let's see. Website. Oh, I'm having a hard time here. I had it all queued up.
Take your time.
All right. Thank
There you
you for finally. Okay. All right. So empathy has not improved my technical skills. So if that's what you came here for, we're very sorry. Okay. So here you can get to the site through Best Empathy Training. Here's a cohort. And there is a video that'll take you through the whole training, step by step. Generally, what we want to do is to spread the practice of empathic listening and the values associated with that throughout the world. It's an open source empathy training. I know a lot of you have professionals with extensive training, and that means that you can take this and you can incorporate it into your own trainings. For instance, it's an excellent icebreaker activity, is one example. It's a sliding scale donation. So you're welcome to contribute if you can. And if not, if that's a problem for you, you're still welcome, because we can't have too many empathic listeners these days. If you're interested in the training, there's a 2 empathy circle prerequisite. So you come to these cafes. This is one today, so you're halfway there if you're interested. And then that's what this is, this training's introduction cafe. The time commitment, everyone that you see here is a volunteer, and we put together, it's a 5-week course. It's 2.5 hours a week, weekly. And we have them on Saturdays and Mondays. The Saturday cohort is going to be starting August 6th, and then we'll have a Monday cohort after that, and that's October 3rd. But if you do commit to the training, please attend all the trainings, because we manage numbers and things like that. And if people kind of drop in and drop out, it makes it very difficult for us. That being said, if you have a life emergency or something like that, we understand. It's an ongoing training in a way, in the sense that you can take it the first time you're a participant, but then you can take it repeatedly if you wish, so that you can learn to actually put on your own trainings. And so you go through, there's a trainee, trainer path, etc. And then you can put on your own trainings if you wish. We do give certificates of completion. These are not college credits as of this point, but it's something we would be welcome if anybody could help us with that. And the other thing is to build a supportive community. What you will see here is a lot of people who are ECF or Empathy Circle facilitators have taken the training. And we stay in touch, and Edwin put out the call, and I'm always so gratified by how many people show up. So we're developing, I think, friendships across the globe, and that's, I think, can't be understated, the importance of that. As you scroll down, here's the information and everything you need for Saturdays or Mondays to join, to fill out forms and things like that. Edwin has tremendous amount of resources on empathy, which are over here on the sidebar here and also down there. And that's a quick, if albeit bulky, kind of introduction. Sorry for the delay, and I'll give it back to Edwin.
Okay, thanks, Bill. So what we want to do is explain how to do the empathy circle practice. And there's a PDF, as I mentioned before, that you can open. And Lou is going to give us a little introduction of the sort of the step-by-step how to.
Thanks,
take it away, Lou.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I'm really excited that all the people here and the level of experience that a lot of people have is really amazing. I know from the introductions that a lot of you have experience with different kinds of listening practices or empathy practices. So the empathy circle may seem kind of stupidly simple to you, and it is. I have a background, an extensive background actually in teaching nonviolent communication and restorative circles, with two practices I think that have been mentioned by other people. And because I have a lot of experience trying to teach these things, I was amazed at how the structure of the empathy circle, the simplicity of the structure of it, helps people learn some of the things that I had, that have been a challenge to teach. And they learn it by experience. They learn it by observing other people. And in the empathy circle practice, the facilitator is a participant in the circle. He's another participant that has, a level of experience and helps people stay in the process. So the way it works is, ideally you do this with a group of 4 or 5 people is the optimum number. And someone takes a turn speaking. But before you begin to speak, you select someone else in the circle to reflect back what you are saying. And the speaking turns are timed, usually 5 minutes. It depends on the amount of time you're doing the empathy circle for, but generally we start with 5-minute turns. And the speaker starts speaking, and after you get an idea or two out, you pause, the speaker pauses, so that the reflector can reflect back what they understand the speaker is saying. And, it's hard for a reflector, the person who's doing the active listening, to hang on to more than an idea or two. So that's why we ask the speaker to pause after an idea or two, and then the reflector reflects it back. Now the only instructions to the speaker is say whatever you want. Sometimes there's a topic for the circle. Sometimes there's no topic. So the speaker just speaks about whatever they want. And actually it's a very strong rule of the circle that when it gets to you and you're the speaker, you talk about whatever you want, even if it's not, if there is a topic for the circle and it's not on the topic. If it's important to you in that moment, then talk about it, because that's what keeps the circle relevant and meaningful, is that you're talking about what's important to you. So, and the instruction to the reflector is, the person who's reflecting back is, just reflect back what you understand the person's saying, and maybe how they feel about it, if you have a sense of that. So the things that people normally do in normal conversation, which would be ask questions, agree or disagree, make any kind of comments, add your own experience, any of that, the reflector does not do. You just reflect back what you understand the person's saying and maybe how they're feeling about So that reflecting, you know, and as the speaker, if the reflector doesn't quite get it, you could say, no, that wasn't it. Or if they get part of it, you could say, yes, you got this part, but you know, this part was important to me that you didn't get, and you could say it again. And so the speaking and reflecting goes back for the length of the turn. And then at the end of the turn, if the speaker feels heard, they can say, you know, I feel heard, as a way of ending their turn. And then the reflector becomes the speaker, and they select someone else in the circle to be their reflector. And in that way, the speaking and the reflecting goes around the circle till everyone gets a chance. And then if there's more, if you're doing it for more time, you just keep going. You keep making rounds. And actually the idea is to get to a third or fourth speaking turn in the rounds. That's, you know, the circle actually becomes interesting the more people talk. So normally as a facilitator, you kind of do the math between how many people do we have and how long are we able to do this. And that's how you determine what the length of the speaking turns are going to be generally. So if you're doing this for an hour and a half and you have 4 or 5 people, 5-minute turns, people get 3 or 4 speaking turns. What else do I want to say? Some of the things the facilitator will do. So the facilitator keeps time. And again, the turns are timed so that there's built-in mutuality in the circle. So everybody gets an equal chance to speak and be heard. And that is the goal, is for the speaker to be heard. So the facilitator will keep time and give some kind of time cue. Some people hold up a little sign that says time. Some people hold up, like I use my phone, and there's an audio cue on the phone. And when you get the time cue, you don't have to stop speaking instantly. You finish your idea and then get your reflection and go on to the next speaker. Another thing the facilitator will remind speakers to pause, because that's kind of not something we naturally do, and it's easy to forget to pause. And certainly the listener, the person who's the reflector, certainly can hold up a hand. If the speaker is going on for too long or it's more than you can hold, you can ask the speaker to stop. You can hold up your hand. The other thing that the facilitator will do was remind the reflector, if they are asking questions or making comments or whatever, if you kind of forget and you start to do that, the facilitator will remind the reflector of what their role is. And then the last thing is if a speaker really is not feeling heard and they're uncomfortable, then the facilitator might assist with the reflection, add in the things maybe that are being missed by the reflector, so that the speaker feels heard, because that's the most important thing, is that the speaker feel heard to their satisfaction. Okay, I think that's it. Any other, Edwin, do you have anything to add to
That's
that?
it.
Or
There's
Bill?
also the PDF. If anybody wants to click on that PDF, there's just a shorthand there for the process. And the topic, I'm just putting the topic into the chat, which is how might we foster more listening, empathy, and dialogue in society, or whatever is alive for you. So you can just talk about anything that's on your mind. We're going to do 5-minute turns. We have 5 rooms. The first one, Lou, you would facilitate in the main room here. The second one, Gabby, supported by Larry. Third one is, let's see, that's Michelle. Number 4 is Dwayne, and number 5 is Anne.
I just want to say one more thing. I just want to reiterate that while the process I just described may seem stupidly simple, it kind of is, and it's amazing what that little bit of structure creates over time. And so if you're uncomfortable with it or have some problem with it, just hang out with it and try it, is my request, and see how it goes for you.
Great. And we'll be going for about 70 minutes, and I'll send a notice give you a 10 minutes heads up before we close. So I think we're ready to go into the circles and actually do the practice. And I'm going to open all the rooms, and here we go. And Celine, you're here with us if you're going to drop out or.
Yeah, I think I will if you don't
Okay,
need me.
no, we're good.
All right, great.
Thanks.
Bye, Celine.
And bye. Good to see y'all.
Okay, so this is us. Lou, you're facilitating.
Okay, great. Yeah, so welcome everybody. So I think whereas the process I described, the speaker picks the listener for this, because everyone or people are new to this, I'm going to be the first reflector, the first listener, so that people can see what reflection is like. And could I have a volunteer to be the first speaker?
I can go, I guess.
Okay, thank you, Caesar. And let's see, what's the topic? I've forgotten what the topic is. The topic
How we might
is
foster more listening, empathy, and dialogue in society.
okay, or whatever's alive in you, right?
Where is the topic?
It's in the chat.
Oh,
So how might we
Oh.
foster listening, empathy, and dialogue in society? Okay, or whatever's alive for you. So Caesar's going to go first, and I'm going to keep time on my phone. You'll hear the chime go off. If I don't think you're hearing it, I'll hold my phone up as a visual cue.
Okay.
All right. So go ahead, Caesar.
All right. Well, with this topic, I guess how I approach these things is more like focus on what I can improve in myself first. So like whether listening or empathy. So kind of more from an approach of like self-awareness and mindfulness of myself and like what's going on inside before trying to like expand that to others or share that.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is when you think about how do we make a more empathic society, what comes to mind for you is working on yourself. Like how can I improve myself before thinking about how to help others do that?
Yeah. So I would say that captures that, but also I would say it could also be more situational, and I would say maybe this is where I'm at, but that may not be the best approach for everyone, and whatever situation they're in can kind of entail a different kind of process to that, I guess.
Yeah, so you're emphasizing that that thing of focusing on yourself, that's where you are, and that's how you're feeling right now. But you want to say that different people are in different situations, and that might not be the right approach for everybody. So you're wanting to communicate some openness about that, like people should have choice about how they do it.
How that can kind of touch on like introversion or extroversion, how some people may be more predisposed to one or the other, and like maybe this more open circle could help that for some versus like learning this idea and then kind of going in their own solitude and then coming back, or kind of so different approaches for different people maybe.
Yeah, so you're acknowledging that there are different personality types or styles. Some people are more introverted, some people more extroverted, and people also learn in different ways. I think that's what you were saying, and so you're just wanting to provide flexibility for that.
Yeah, and then I guess more on the personality, I think like having a very open-minded perspective to like a lot of things can help facilitate this listening and empathy, and even like things like humility, aspects like that.
Yeah, so you're saying that you think open-mindedness or openness and humility are two really important values or characteristics that promote empathy.
And then I think changing it up a little bit, thinking about like the space aspect of like where do I, so like I would say this is a very good space to kind of foster that, where if you just go out on the street and just have a confrontational that will be less likely to like facilitate this, where kind of that safe space and very non-adversarial kind of space, I guess.
Yeah, so I got two things from what you said there. One was that the space that you create for, or what is the circumstance for engaging in empathic activity, is important. Like this thing, what we've created here, you think is a good supportive space. And if you were just walked out into the world and tried to do something that's really a different circumstance and might need something different. And then the other point was about your kind of your attitude or your approach. Is it confrontational, or is it something else? Is it more loving or open or something like that? Open and humble.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, then going back to kind of the first part of the question on how we might foster it. So I would say that kind of requires you to look at where you're at, what opportunities you have, and like what your roles are, and even just kind of living these sort of practices out in all your communication, not just like you go to an empathy circle, but in all of like, just cashier or the waiter, or like live it throughout all of communication.
Yeah, so you're saying that when you say how might we do it, that makes you think about who is the we, or what? Actually, you said what is my role? So looking at what roles do I play in the world, and where might I have opportunity to engage others in doing this? And then the second point, I think, was about kind of living empathy, not just like thinking, oh, well, I'll be empathic with these people, but actually being conscious of, am I empathic with everyone? Like even the person at the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the timer.
All right.
You heard it?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you feel heard?
Yeah. Yeah,
Great.
no, I did.
Okay, great. Thanks. All right. So I'll go to Sovnat. Is that how you say your name?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is that all right? Will you be
Yeah.
my reflector? Thank you. Okay.
I'll try.
Yeah. That's all we do. Yeah. Okay, let's see. What an interesting topic. How might we create a more empathic world? Well, so I agree with Caesar that the first thing is for me to be empathic, and I think actually to have empathy for myself. I think that actually is the thing, is for me to be kind to myself and compassionate and loving with myself. Because when I feel at peace and I feel understood, it's much easier for me to extend that to other people.
So thank you. So you're saying that you basically agree with Caesar. Do I pronounce your name right, Caesar? Yeah. And you say that if you have empathy to yourself, toward yourself, and compassionate and loving, then you are more compassionate and loving toward others. And if you are in peace with yourself, within yourself, then you can be more open toward other people. Did I say
Yes.
it right?
Yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
Mhm,
Thank you.
mhm.
Yeah, and this is reminding me that in the leadership training that I do, which I've been doing for like 20 years, a really strong lesson that's come out of that for me is that when people feel, so I've learned this from working with lots and lots of different people, when people start to accept themselves more and love themselves more, it sounds very cliched, you got to love yourself, but when people actually do start to accept themselves more and forgive themselves and love themselves, they immediately start to do that more easily with other people. It kind of happens automatically. I'll stop there.
Yes, so you saying that this is what you learned over the years in your leadership training, and it was a strong lesson for you that if people accept themselves more, then it's easier for them to, you didn't say reach out, but to be open toward other people.
Yeah, be compassionate towards them, or
Be
empathic.
compassionate.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, and I think this practice, which, you know, really just slows everything down and gives people a chance to be heard, it's so sad to me that that happens so rarely actually in life, that we really just kind of slow down and listen to each other and then take the time to let the other person know that we've heard them and that we understand them. And this practice is very good for that. And it's amazing what happens when people actually experience that. Somebody just listening to them and acknowledging what they are hearing and understanding the other person.
Okay, I'm not sure I got the last part, but you say that this kind of practice slows things down, and it gives people a chance to be heard. And it is sad that we don't have that many opportunities in our culture or life, or I don't know what exactly you said. Maybe you'll correct me. Yeah, maybe you can complete what I
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah, just that people don't experience it much.
Yeah, don't
It's
experience it
sad that
much.
we don't experience that more.
Yeah, it is sad.
And it's surprising that when people do experience it, what happens inside. People feel cared for, they feel seen, they feel, yeah, accepted.
Yeah, so yeah, you reinforce that it's sad that people don't experience it enough. And it's yeah, and that it's better for us to experience it more, then we are more compassionate toward
Yeah.
one another.
Yeah, and people feel
Yeah.
cared for. Yes.
We
Thank
feel
you. Thank you
careful.
very
I'm
much.
sorry.
No, you're
I'm
fine. Thank
trying.
you. I feel very heard. Thank you.
You're welcome. So it's my turn
To
now,
speak?
or
Yes,
yeah?
yeah. And you
Oh,
select a
wow.
reflector.
All right. So one thing I learned.
Who would you like to reflect your debt?
Who's left?
So it could be Deb or Edwin.
Or Edwin? Yeah, Edwin, go ahead.
Okay, listening.
You must be very experienced in this. I will share with you that additional thing that additional thought that I have to what I'm going to say is that I'm working now with the Quakers community, and every meeting we start with a silence. And after people talk, we take some time to digest. And it feels really good. I think it deepened our connections. And I am the teacher there, so that's funny, but this is what I learned from them. So we
Okay, so
always learn from one another. Sorry.
I can reflect that. So you're working with Quakers now, and you're saying that you're teaching there, but you're also learning. And that at first you take about some silence, and then people speak, and then you kind of reflect on what they have said.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Though I didn't say but, say and.
And
It's just, yeah. It's an additional way of really deeply listening and understanding one another. I feel it's really good. In response to your question, I actually learned that I start with people understanding the water that we swim in, which is the Western individualist culture that actually inherently divides us.
So you, with your teaching, you try to have people understand the water that we swim in, and sort of this water is this Western individualism, and try to explain that to people.
Right, because I want to create the motivation for people to listen and to include other people. Because if we don't understand that we're inherently divisive, then everything that is important is myself.
So you'd like to really get kind of build this, nurture this motivation, and that you want people to understand that we're in this sort of divisive culture, and then you're sort of looking for the motivation
so that people don't just say, oh, it's kind to have empathy toward others. There's more into it. We are actually becoming or are created through the interactions, through the relationships. And in order to participate in that with curiosity, we have to understand that we are interdependent, and that interaction creates who we are.
So you'd really like to get people to understand that we're interdependent, and our interaction is sort of how we become who we are, or we.
Right. How long should I go for?
You have
How long
5
do I
minutes,
have?
and
Yeah,
Lou will
you
hold
have
up
5
something.
minutes, and I'll let you know when time's up. If you, I mean, you don't have.
You will.
You don't,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I can use time. I just don't want to take any time from other people. So I start with the motivation, because for me, empathy is transformative empathy, meaning including other people, and it's an inner dialogue and outer dialogue, and it keeps moving and going. It's an inclusive, transformative process. It's not just being kind. Oh, I listened to you, I'll do you a favor. It's not about that. It's about being a different, restructuring the way we are with one another.
Yeah, so you see empathy as really about restructuring how we are from instead of individualistic. We're in a relationship, and that's how we become who we are. And you're trying to really foster that awareness of that interconnection.
Right. Exactly. Thank you. Otherwise, we are isolated, bounded selves within ourselves, and growth is coming only through that interaction. If the more we recognize it, the more well-being we experience.
So that individualistic process is more detached, more lonely, and that and that versus sort of this interconnected empathic approach, which sounds like you think is better, more healthy, or
it's healthier. It helps us to grow and learn and improve.
Yeah, so it's how we learn, grow, and improve is So do you feel heard to your side?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you, Edwin.
Then I'll speak to Deb. I might.
Okay.
Yeah, in terms of how to, changing how we think of things in terms of individualistic to social, relational, I think is core. But how to move, towards that is really tough in society.
So, so you're building on what, and I can't pronounce your name, I'm so sorry, was talking about. Sofnat was talking about, which is really acknowledging that the water we swim in is really individualistic, and that part of the transformation is to move to more of a social, interactive, relational setup. And the question of how do you actually do that is really hard.
Yeah, I've been trying all kinds of different approaches to sort of promote that. The empathy circles, we do an empathy tent, we go out and listen in public. We've done, conflict mediation. And I also ran for Congress with that message just a couple of months ago, we had the election.
So you've been trying a lot of different things, including running for office. Bless your heart. We need more people like you. As well as these empathy circles, you've done mediations, you've tried different things.
I only got 3% of the vote, and it was a very explicit empathy message. It's like, we need empathy, we need to bridge the divides. 3% voted, and 60% voted for the establishment candidate, right? The powers that be, they voted for the status quo.
So you ran on an empathy platform and got 3% of the vote, and 60% went for the powers that be.
Yeah, and another 20% went for the Republican status quo. That was a Democratic status quo. Then there was a 20% for the Republican status quo.
Oh, gosh.
So the 20% on top of what you just shared went for the Republican status quo, and I'm not going to make any presumptions about it.
So I'm just trying all kinds of different things. I think that if we could do empathy circle with high profile people, so if we had Trump and Biden, for example, doing an empathy circle instead of a debate, or Oprah Winfrey and somebody else, some movie stars, that they're doing empathy circles, that just by observing this process, it would kind of get it out there. So that's one idea.
So using empathy circles in political debates instead of an actual debate is one thought. And inviting famous people like Oprah to use empathy circles is a way to get the approach out there.
Oh, talking about debate, we did empathy circles. The first thing I did was invite fellow candidates to an empathy circle. 2 of the candidates, there was 5 of us, took part. The establishment candidate didn't even bother responding. I think using that process and it was a great discussion. We had a really good discussion too.
So you invited your opponents, fellow candidates, to an empathy circle, and 3 showed up. The establishment candidates didn't, but it led to a really good conversation.
And then that inspired somebody else to do one in Nancy Pelosi's district, and she didn't show up either.
So, so some other people are starting to, at least one other person is making the invitation, and in that circumstance, Nancy Pelosi didn't show up either.
Yeah, in her district. So yeah. I think we need a movement. Just like there's a civil rights movement, a women's voting movement, LGBT, marriage movement. I think there's a need for like an empathy movement where we're kind of like conscious to be, and that's what we're trying to start organize now, is a movement for fostering this social mindset, this empathic mindset way of being.
So what you're really working on with other people is to organize a movement to foster an empathic mindset, empathy among people.
Yeah, maybe one thing we could do is like an Occupy Empathy. So, we had Occupy Wall Street, but we go out and we occupy a space, and what we do, empathic dialogue and listening, and maybe occupy the, in front of the Congress, in front of the Congress, and with empathy tents, something to get out there in public.
So you're playing around with what would an Occupy Empathy movement look like, and what would it look like to bring this into a public space?
Exactly. I feel deeply heard. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I don't know if it's bad to enjoy and laugh, but Edwin, I really enjoyed you.
It borders on commenting. It's not quite commenting, but it borders on it. Yeah. So
I got swept up.
Well, and when it's your turn to speak, you can say whatever you want. So if you want to say something about it, you can.
Yeah. Lou, I guess we're coming back around to you. Is that right? Or
Okay.
Cesar?
It's your choice. Actually, I think Cesar hasn't reflected yet, so it actually would go back to him.
Perfect. Okay.
Is that all right with you, Cesar? You be a reflector?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
So my mind is, I have the fortune, I think, of speaking last. So my mind is going in two different places. The first thing I'm thinking about is the distinction Sharon Salzberg makes between empathy and compassion. And she talks about compassion being empathy plus boundaries plus taking action. And I find that to be a really powerful distinction.
So what you're saying is you're kind of split in two different directions. I forgot the name of the lady you just mentioned, but how she makes a divide between compassion and empathy. And then if you could elaborate on that distinction again.
Yeah. So what she talks about is how when we're really deeply listening and fully present and really in tune with how other people are feeling, it can lead to empathic fatigue. Most people call it compassion fatigue. She talks about it as empathic fatigue. And that including those two additional components, boundaries and action, make it a more sustainable practice and mindset and commitment.
Okay, so you're saying that she talks about with empathy on how it can be a draining process to the individual, especially the more they kind of live it out, and that two things that can help with that and make it more sustainable to the person and in general is boundaries. And what was that second part?
Oh, taking some small action.
And yeah, taking some small action.
But what I'm more, so I just throw that out there because it was coming up for me as I was listening to each of you. The other thing I'm thinking about is pretty applied. So I'm facilitating a retreat, a tiny little retreat for a team that's having a lot of conflict on Thursday in a beautiful place in the mountains with no electricity and no internet, which I know is going to be challenging for them. But one of the ways in which they're broken is that they've been in conflict so long they have lost the ability to connect and feel empathy for each other.
Okay, so now your other kind of idea that's popping out to you is a more applied concept of it, and you are going to have a retreat with a group around conflict, and they've been having conflict for a long time. That's kind of put a barrier to the empathy in the group.
Yeah. And I've been thinking about just how to dwell in the space of giving them time to reconnect with each other as human beings, and to maybe in a slow and safe way, just create some space for them to cultivate just the tiniest bit of empathy for each other, using baby steps. And I'm just really curious about adapting this model in that setting with this group of people.
And now as you're kind of thinking on how to apply this and kind of restore the smallest drop of empathy, you're thinking about how to make the time and space for them and kind of help show their connected humanity to each other, and what baby steps might that be?
Yeah. And maybe, Cesar, to bring it back to where you began, how do we foster more listening, empathy, and dialogue? I've been thinking about fractals a lot lately. So if we can create, cultivate this at just the smallest scale among just a couple of people, I do think that it scales up and vice versa, scales back down. And so, if I can hold a space for them where they can listen a little bit better, have a tiny bit more empathy, and actually have the conversations they need to be having among 4 people, maybe that trickles up throughout their whole organization, and then who knows what happens from there. But to me, that's the starting place.
Yes, what I'm hearing with that is you use or been thinking about fractals and kind of that image of shifting up on different levels, whether they practices for people that can expand higher up or lower and vice versa, and how that's kind of yeah, just kind of thinking about the fractal and zooming in, zooming out.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's where I'm at. I think I'm complete.
All right. So Caesar, it's your turn, and you can pick anyone you want.
How about is it soft nut? All right, so to start back again, one thing that stood out with what Lou was saying is, why don't we experience it more of when he was referring to kind of this space for empathy and whatnot. And I think that can kind of go in two aspects. So first, like looking at what sort of experiences people have like now, whether like you go look at a dinner table and it's all cell phones out and things like that, that can kind of take people out of the present and like the listening space there.
Okay, so you are relating to the question about why don't we use it more, and you say there are two aspects to it, and one is the experience of people like in the dinner table, that they have cell phones, so it distracts them from being present.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's just like one example. And then another example that comes to mind from kind of Edwin's talk is like, what are we observing like in society? So you like turn on TV, you see a debate of two people yelling at each other. And then, so that's there, even if you're not really thinking about it too much, that's kind of the example that's kind of sitting in the back of your mind, and like what is being normalized, I guess.
So you're saying another example is what Edwin was talking about when we see a debate on TV, and that's how, that's what is normalized in our culture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, I guess tying back to your point on, you're talking like the metaphor with water, of like what water are we swimming in? So not just like the culture of like individualism, but kind of what is the water of communication and like between not just friends, but then like your differing groups, and kind of what is the standard there, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So this is similar to what you said before about the norms, like the water we swim in and what's normal in that water, for us, how we communicate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think with these is like that first step, that baby step is kind of realizing where like the group is at, the individual is at. So if it's a group of people of different cultures, kind of understanding that from the get-go, or like generations, or like a whole number of things.
So you're saying like we need to take baby steps, and the first step is to understand where the group or the individual are at, and start from there.
Mm-hmm. And then I think also maybe having an early conversation on like what motivations they would have to kind of come together and kind of look forward in that way.
So having a conversation about what connects them, what they have common things they have together to move on.
Yeah, I would say, and then I would say that's good for me for now, and we can continue the circle.
Okay. Yeah. So building on the different.
Who would you like to who would you like to be your reflector?
Right. Yes, that's right. So let's take somebody else. So before I had Edwin, Deb, do you want to take it?
Sure.
Okay. So yeah, so now we have lots of material and ideas. So building on Edwin's concerns and attempts to establish empathy in our culture. What do you think about, in schools in America, we have the debate club. Why don't we have the dialogue club?
So you're building on some of Edwin's ideas that he's tried out and suggesting an empathy club, a dialogue club, excuse me, in schools.
Yeah, because I think it's better to start early, with kids, not just, I was part of starting democratic schools in Israel. And in our schools, we had all the structures of democracy. We didn't just teach about democracy, but we experienced democracy and democratic decision-making every day.
So you're referencing your experiences building democratic schools in Israel and noting that you didn't just teach democracy, but that it was hard baked into what students and teachers experienced every day.
Yeah, so when we experience a different way of living together and making decisions based on dignity and equality and equity, then it's really hard to come out of school behaving, adversarial, though I have my criticism about this project as well, although it was very successful for one school. We have more than 30 today.
Maybe pause there.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks, Lou. That was getting complex. So, so you're starting to talk about what happens when students come out of school having been grounded in an approach that's about dignity, equality, and equity, and how it's hard to behave in an adversarial way.
Yeah. Just your muscle it acts in a different way. Your automatic responses are different, I think.
Yeah, so so that when that's been your educational experience, you have different automatic responses to adversarial situations.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I was heard.
So I want to say something. So no speaker is obligated to use all of their time, but I also want to encourage you, if you finish with what you're saying, to give yourself 10 seconds, 15 seconds, see if something else arises in you that you might want to say.
You talking about the speaker or the listener?
The speaker.
Now.
Yeah.
The speaker.
So that you said you felt done. And so I'm just encouraging, because Caesar said that too, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you're really feeling done, it's fine to move on. But I also want you to know that you don't have to have figured out everything that you want to say. And if you want to take a 10, 15 seconds and see if something else arises that you want to say, that's fine to do too.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to do that, or you want to move on?
Would you like a little more time, or do you feel complete?
I'm listening to myself and to you.
Okay.
Really, for me, is getting out of the me, I mindset. It's a mission for all of us to be connected in a different way.
So you're reflecting on for all of us to get out of the me and I mindset and connect in a
Thank you.
So I pick a listener now, I think. Edwin, I'm going to talk politics, so I'd love for you to.
Okay. Yeah, you're choosing me because you want to talk politics. You're thinking
No,
that's
I just
my-
think you've thought about it. So I didn't grow up here, but I live in Wyoming, which I'm sure you all know to be a deeply red, very conservative state. And I've lived here about a decade, moved up from Colorado, and I think here, like in other places, there's a battle for the soul of the conservative party.
So you're living in Wyoming, which is a deeply red state, and you're just seeing that then there's a battle for the soul of the which party? The Republican
I said
Party?
Conservative, but it's really a one party state. So we're in the middle of our primary right now, and Liz Cheney, Representative Cheney, is our sole representative. She's been one of 2 Republicans, of course, serving on the House committee. And her opponent is this woman, I always mispronounce her name, Harriet Hageman, whose sole claim to fame is that Trump has endorsed her fully. And the point is that I walk around my neighborhood and I see a lot of Hageman signs, so Cheney opponent signs.
Yeah, so there's a battle for the Republican, the soul of the conservative party. One is Cheney's, sort of her approach, and the other is a Trump endorsed candidate. You're seeing a lot of support for the Trump supported candidate.
Yeah, which is kind of changed since I moved here. It was actually really refreshing a decade ago to come here, and what we're talking about was really prevalent, that it's a rural state and people listened and connected, and there was dialogue, even if it wasn't always the dialogue I liked. It happened, and that's been happening less and less here, and it's sort of illustrated by the current primary, and it's pretty distressing.
So you're feeling quite distressed because it used to be people were actually dialogue with each other, and that's happening less and less all the time.
Yeah. So I'm reflecting on how hard this actually is, the question of how do we listen, foster more listening, empathy, and dialogue, right? So I walk around my neighborhood, which is filled with, as far as I know, lovely people with their dogs and all the things. And I see the Hageman signs, and it's like a punch to the gut. And my job is essentially what we're talking about. And so I'm imagining, what could I do at my block scale to engage in conversation with people whose values are so different than mine? And I mean, in all honesty, I don't know if I can stomach it. So there's that piece of it for me right now.
Yeah, so you're really wondering what you can do in your neighborhood to foster this listening and dialogue. And when you see those Hageman signs, like a punch to the gut, and you're just not sure what you can do to create that dialogue.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about special ordering a campaign sign from my yard that says voters for truth, sanity, and the American way, or something like that, and then putting a chair next to it and inviting anyone to, sit down and talk with me. But this question of, is the task to strive for this with everybody, or is it to strive for this with people who are open to reciprocating listening and empathy and dialogue? And I really actually struggle with this.
Yeah, so this is a real struggle. One idea is to set up a chair and offer to talk with people, have a little sign there for truth and dignity, and it's a real struggle what to do.
Yeah. So I feel like we're we're at this, I don't know if there's multiple crossroads in life, but it feels like a pretty pivotal point, at least in the US, where, there's some choices we make about maintaining lines of communication or honestly requiring a sanity check before we engage in dialogue. I hate saying that, but it feels so immediate and so present. So I think I love all the ideas that all of you have thrown around. And I think when we're getting into just the really, really nasty stuff right now, the path forward feels complicated.
Mhm. Yeah, so you're saying that maybe the country's at a inflection point, which direction will it go? And it just seems so complicated, like how to, what steps to take. Maybe so, yeah, it's complicated, difficult.
Yep.
Feel heard?
I do. Thanks, Edwin.
Okay. Speak to Lou then.
Okay.
Yeah, building on what Deb was saying, that like you and I, Lou, and some others, we've taken an empathy tent out to conflict zones where the political left and right were having knockdown, drag out fights here in Berkeley. So we would go set up the tent and offer to listen to both sides and then try to get the sides to listen to each other.
Yeah, so you're saying that one strategy to kind of address the things that Deb was describing, the political polarization that you've done, is the empathy tent, which is a tent that you take into a public space and invite people into listening to each other, people who are opposed to each other politically.
And it was the thing that we've done that's gotten the most publicity. Like Breitbart wrote about it. Fox and Friends, had it on their show, even though it's kind of distorted. And a lot of different, papers and so forth, newspapers wrote about it. So it is one way to get publicity, is being sort of out in public, taking public action.
Yeah, so you're saying that doing stuff out in public, like the empathy tent, is a good way to raise awareness and to get publicity about what you're doing. And you described the different news outlets that showed an interest in the empathy tent activity you described.
And that's why I'm thinking like an occupy empathy, for better words, is like being out in public, camp out in front of the State House or, whatever, the city hall. And like, we're not leaving here until the politicians have empathy circles with each other, or something like that. Because I think, those out in the street actions is what sort of gets people's attention.
Yeah, so your current thinking about the best thing to do is the Occupy Empathy idea of just trying to create a mass movement and going out into public spaces, maybe near government buildings or government offices, and insisting that representatives come out and participate in empathic dialogue.
But the thing I want to do now, what I'm actually working on, is a course. We have our 5-week facilitator training course on how to facilitate these empathy circles. I'm working on a 6-week course on defining empathy, just to be clear about what we're talking about. So to have a course to really, because it's so confusing what people mean by empathy and compassion, and yeah.
Yeah, so another one of your current activities is creating an empathy training module where you talk about the various ideas or concepts of empathy or definitions of empathy, to try to help clarify what those are, and to clarify, what you are trying to promote, what the empathy circle is trying to promote.
And the core of this definition, this process will be different in that we'll be defining the terms within the context of the empathy circle. So when Sharon Salzberger says, hey, compassion does this, it's like, okay, Sharon, come into the empathy circle and show me the compassion. There's 5 of us here now. Show me specifically where you see the compassion. Show me where you see the, the empathy fatigue, etc.
Yeah, and so you're an important element or thread of the empathy training module is anchoring the different parts of it in the empathy circle and how the empathy circle promotes that. And you're thinking that other empathy theorists or whatever would benefit from seeing that or experiencing it if they were in the empathy circle?
Yeah, because so the lack of clarity is people are kind of talking about different things. Like there's a book called Against Empathy and For Rational Compassion or something. And I've tried for 5 years to get that person into an empathy circle. He refuses to take part. And the thing he's calling empathy, I don't even consider empathy. And his criticisms of the things that he's talking about, I actually agree with, except I would say the thing he's calling empathy is a block to empathy. So we're kind of like talking past each other all the time.
Yeah, so something you feel very strongly about is that there's a lot of misunderstanding about empathy, and the different ways that people define it. And so you really would really like to get these people that talk about empathy, write about empathy, the empathy experts, you would really like to get them in an empathy circle and have them experience what you are talking about and have dialogue about the different definitions of empathy. You think that'll provide clarity and understanding?
Yep, feel fully heard. Thanks, Lou.
Okay. All right. I'll go to Caesar. Is that all right with you, Caesar?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So many things to talk about, so many different ideas. Gosh. So what do I want to say? So I want to talk about the difficulty of listening to people that are saying or behaving in ways that I really disagree with, kind of talking about what Deb was talking about, political polarization, and do I actually have the wherewithal to listen to people who are saying things, that are very upsetting. I'll stop there.
All right, so you're kind of pondering on all these ideas that have come about in the previous rounds, and one thing that stuck out to you is how do you balance, I guess, listening to opinions or other people that could trigger distress, I guess, within yourself, and how to stay composed in that process.
Yeah, and so there are two things I'd say about that. So the first is, one of the things about the empathy circle is there's built-in mutuality there. We take turns and they're timed. So if you're a person who's trying to listen and understand, you don't have to like protect yourself to make sure you have time to speak. And but something that happens in normal conversation, like if you go and engage someone who thinks differently than you, then you may listen to them for a while, but right, there's no guarantee that they're going to want to listen to you. And so the question of, is there a way to create balance? There might be a way to do that. So I'll stop there.
All right, so you're touching kind of more on the process of the empathy circle and how there's a built-in mutuality within it. So people know going into it that they'll have equal speaking time, so that they're not on edge, versus in a normal conversation, one person can just speak on and you might not know if you have a chance or that kind of same time, so to speak.
Yeah, and this is a skill that I learned in a group called Braver Angels, which is that you listen to them and reflect them back and show some understanding for them, and then when they look like they've heard some, you say, so I have a different way of looking at this, or I've done some reading and I learned this about that. Would you be willing to hear what I have to say about that? That's called a pivot. That you're kind of signaling that you would like to say something, and then you see if there's openness to that.
So you're drawing upon your previous example, was it Braver Angels, on how you kind of go through these phases of reflecting back, and then once the speaker feels heard, then you'll kind of pivot to try to flip the chairs, so to speak, and have a space.
Yeah, and then and if they're not open, then you would go back to listening. But of course, you don't have to do that forever. If the person never shows any openness, then you would exit the conversation. So that, that's one way of protecting yourself, how much you do that.
Yeah, and then you just mentioned how if they're not open, then you kind of go back to reflecting again, and that you aren't tied into this forever, and that you can kind of exit, so to speak.
Yeah, and the other thing I'd say is I have some experience in holding empathy circles for cross political dialogue, bridging divides. And when I first started that, most of the people that came to them were similar to me in terms of political viewpoint. And in order to get people of other political viewpoints to come, I had to do some legwork. Like I had to go, you have to build enough trust that those people would be willing to come and know they'll be listened to, and that they're not just going to be attacked or whatever. And so that involved like going to organizations, conservative organizations, and making presentation, doing a little demonstration of listening and so forth. And so, yeah, so building trust, is part of what gets people into dialogue.
Yeah, so you're drawn upon your previous experience kind of working across the political divides, and you mentioned how in kind of your first experiences with that, it's mostly similar-minded people to you, and so you weren't getting the full extremes from those ends. And so carrying on from that, you kind of had to do a lot more groundwork, legwork, and go into those communities themselves just to kind of and with that, you're trying to build trust with them through presentations and like real examples to get them to kind of come together.
Yes, thank you. I feel heard.
All right, and this is my turn again.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll choose Edwin.
Listening.
All right. One thing that was sticking out to me a little bit was one thing that was talking about on, especially kind of reaching the farther ends and kind of touching a similar point to what Lou was mentioning with the farther ends of the divides. I'll stop here for the guy. I'm kind of rambling.
Yeah, so you're wanting to talk about the farther ends of the divide, which is what Lou was talking about.
Yeah, and then I guess specifically when Deb was mentioning, like, how far do you go? Do you draw a line? And I would say I would probably push back against that. And like her phrasing was kind of the sanity check, so to speak. And I think that could be a little judgmental in a way, or to at least the other side, and kind of push them away, so to speak.
So saying, oh, we do a sanity check in terms of who we're willing to dialogue with, and you're concerned about that would be might be judgmental and push people away.
Yeah, and I think back to kind of the initial topic with like how to foster that, and I think suspending judgment is a big part of that, and not just in listening, but in like all of them. So like someone cuts you off in traffic, like don't just let your immediate judgment there. Like, so not just in communication, but in like what assumptions are you like throwing out in your everyday life.
So you want to set aside judgment and really listen. Sounds like to all people. And the example was if you're being cut off, not to judge that person.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess having that pause. Forgot who was mentioning that before. Always that soften that with her Quaker practices on how they have to kind of silence and pause to let things kind of settle in, and I think that can go a long way and across many aspects.
So when you're listening is to not get upset right away, but to have a little pause, and just like the Quakers do, that could be helpful.
And then let's see, trying to think more on the application side, you're your empathy tends to sound very promising in that regard. Let's see.
So you like the idea of the empathy tent sounds promising.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes back to an earlier point of like, what do people see? So if they walk whatever in their like downtown, old town, or campus, community, whatever, and they see this going on and they kind of live through it, then that will kind of plant the seed, so to speak.
If people see it where they're walking, for example, like with the empathy tent, that plants the seed for that empathic or listening approach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of that alternative to just the pure confrontation, especially as people are more on the internet and whatnot, or TV, and they just see Twitter reply, or stuff like that, where kind of bringing them back to just in person. So I guess trying to think, how do you apply that to this online world as well?
So you're wanting to show an alternative to the Twitter world, the combat, and if people could see an empathy tent or something like that, that would kind of help. And you're just trying to think of how to create, opportunities like that.
Yeah, and let me see. I'm drawing blanks now.
Yeah, just drawing blanks. You're trying to think of ideas and just drawing a blank.
Yeah, I'll cede the rest of my time.
Okay, so you feel heard. Then I'll speak to Safnat. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Okay, I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that feeling. You're just like, well, what do I say now? I've kind of said everything. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same way. I do think that the empathy movement, having some more courses and then having a street level empathy, movement is sort of what's needed. It's because it's like, we try a lot of different things, you get some interest, but, to make a cultural shift is tough, it's really tough.
So you're talking about the more courses, but you want to go down to the street level to, I guess you mean the everyday life.
Yeah, to the occupy empathy kind of idea,
yeah, you're talking about a cultural shift, which is very difficult to do.
Yeah, and you've talked about it too, right? Going from the individualistic to the relational. It's a whole shift in sort of, and there's all the social structures that are sort of supporting that individual, everything from the political structures to the educational structures. So it's a tough, it's a big shift.
Right. So you mentioning that both of us talked about structural change, right? It's looking at our life from a relational point of view is very different from the individualist. Even look. Okay, it's your turn. That's my problem. Maybe I'll talk about it later.
Yeah. And I'm also thinking about Deb's mediation that she wants to do, that the empathy circle is really good for that, having people divide into small groups and spending time just listening to each other. We've done a lot of mediation with using the empathy circle as the foundation. Because once people start feeling heard and seen and acknowledged, it's like the stress level goes down.
So you use the empathy circle within, like this structure within the mediation structure to have people a bit options to express themselves.
Yeah, I was just looking at an article that talked about different styles of mediation. It's not like, and one was sort of an individualistic approach, which you're saying, you know, just everybody getting their own needs sort of met. And then, which is sort of that individualistic model. And the other is a relational one, is that we're really trying to build a relationship and the nature and quality of the relationship. And the approach you use for each is different, you know, how you approach it.
Yeah, so you're talking about, you read an article or that talks about approaching mediation from different perspectives, not just focusing on traditionally on the needs, and more about building the relationships.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's yeah, so I guess it was a little bit just throwing that out there, an idea for Deb. Hey, you know, maybe try the empathy circle, you know, see how that works, bring people together. And the other part of the empathy circle is sometimes, you know, I've done mediation training, is you bring people together in community mediation, but then they go home and it's the same dynamics. But you say, hey, here's this process, the empathy circle, take it home, you know, do it in your family, do it with your friends. So you kind of learn this tool for ongoing, you know, supporting it, using it in an ongoing way.
So you're talking about mediation, you know, people experience mediation within the room, but then when they go home, they are back to whatever they used to do. And maybe we can take the empathy circle home with us to the community, to other places, and practice it in whatever we do.
Yeah, and that's also what I see a problem with therapy. You know, therapy is pretty much based on the therapist listening to the client. I mean, that's like the core, you know, gold standard. But it's only one part. Like the empathy circle, everybody's getting listened to, everybody gets to speak. It's not just a one way, the therapist listening, which is definitely going to lead to fatigue. If you're just doing all the listening, you're going to have fatigue, right? So I think I see that with these are some things that can be added to see the relational, how do we shift the culture? And that's my time.
So you compared between therapy, which the therapist is mostly listening. This is like the core value of therapy, and maybe in empathy listening. In empathy circles, we all get to express ourselves, listen to one another. So.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's my time. And also we only have about 2 minutes.
Yes.
So
yeah. So I just want, So I wanted to thank everyone for participating in this. Just quickly, do you have any questions about the process, or how was this for you?
Yeah, so I want to say something. I mean, we are not going to solve it now, but I have a feeling I'll be very provocative now, that even the way that we do it, like the circle that we listen to each other, it's individualistic. We are so embedded in this mindset. And I wonder, how can we do it more flowing and more interactional? It's a question. I don't know the answer.
Well, and I want to point out that, you know, so we really got like 2 speaking turns apiece. I was saying in the introduction that 3 to 4 speaking turns. So we didn't really have an adequate amount of time to fully let this happen. I would also say that everyone in the circle is listening to the speaker. So it isn't just one person's listening to them. Everyone's job is to listen to the speaker. One person is reflecting back.
Right.
So, but I hear what you're saying about, is this reflective of an individualistic culture? Absolutely, that's something to think about. How did Caesar and Deb? How was this for you?
I thought that it was good, and good to see how different people are reflecting back, and versus like what I might have said. But I thought it was a good process, and I guess maybe pushing back a little on Softnut's criticism there. I do like kind of see that perspective, but I guess thinking about it, how to move from like that to the far end where there has to be kind of some steps, so to speak, for especially if you go like if this is your main audience that you are serving, I guess.
And Deb, how about for you?
I really enjoy the slowing down and the spaciousness of the conversation. And I also am imagining using it in settings where there's, you know, either a power imbalance or where someone's just naturally more quiet. And it just evens the playing field from that perspective. So I enjoyed it. I got tired at the end, so my endurance might need some work. That was really interesting. I enjoyed each of you.
And I'll just say one of the things that's very powerful about the process, and this kind of goes actually to what you're saying about groups, more group interaction, is the structure interrupts most of our bad habits of listening. And if you had everyone in the group saying things, it's much more likely people would be commenting, giving advice, asking questions, doing the things that most people don't feel heard by when that happens.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. I think everyone's back now. So we want to do for the remaining 19 minutes that we have is take about 30 seconds, maybe 30 seconds to a minute maximum, just to share how was your experience in the empathy circle. And maybe Larry, would you be willing to call on everyone and sort of keep everyone on track on time too?
All right, Lou, would you share your experience?
Yes, it was, I loved meeting new people and connecting with them. And I love talking about and hearing others talk about how might we create a more empathic society. There are a lot of interesting thoughts about that.
Thank you, Lou. Safnat, would you share your experience, please?
Yeah, thank you for the experience. It's definitely slowing down and listening deeply to other people and learning about how they think and how they see the experience. I am left, we just started talking about it in our group. I am left with the question as to how this structure can be less individualist than it is, like moving from one person to the other and reflecting one person, and how we can make it more interactive. That's my question for myself and for you.
Thank you, Safnat. Thank you. Caesar, would you share your experience, please?
Yeah, I had a very good experience. It was good to see the different ways people were reflecting back. And then even when I was speaking, hearing my own thoughts reflected back, and the little chunks were definitely very helpful. And then, practicing that. Yeah, I think the kind of experiential aspect to this, and as you're kind of just a part of it the whole time, as this one thing, I thought it was good to see and look forward to more.
Thank you, Caesar. And Ellen, would you share your experience, please?
Yes, for me, it was very valuable to see this duality between when I was the reflector. Part of me wanted to just take in this information that the person is imparting and interpret it and do something with it. And then I would come back and say, no, just listen. So that was a bit of a tension in my head. And I just look forward to doing more. And I'm sure that that tension will resolve.
Thank you, Ellen. And Tiffany, would you share, please?
Sure. I think I've set in on a few circles. So sometimes response can be very automated, or the experience can be very, I don't know the correct word for it, but I like being in groups of people and they've joined for the first time, because is so wonderful for them. And it takes me back to a time when I felt the same way. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Tiffany. And Michael, would you share, please?
The off chance you mean me, my name is Michael.
Michael.
I'm not sure, just it's pronounced a lot of different ways by people, and I'm never quite sure who's checking me out. Yeah, I've left with a lot of questions and process and that which I kept trying to interject throughout. So we spent some time, I did, wondering about the right way to do this process and such, and reflecting on why that was a driving force alive in me and that. And so I may have resolved some of that because I was listened to so well by everyone, and that part is what I'm taking away right now. Thinking about how often do I leave other people feeling as heard as I felt.
Thank you, Michael. And Bill, would you share, please?
Yeah, we had a very interesting empathy circle, and we explored a lot of personal topics, but also how to, how to deal with really emotionally charged topics that seem to come up, and what accommodations one might make for that. So as always, it was very stimulating, and I felt heard personally. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Michelle, would you share, please?
I had this like deep sense of like awe and wonder. It was just like, I think it was like the mixture of people that like came together was just, it just felt really right and really perfect. Like it was, the nail was hit on the head somewhere in the middle of it, where somebody had the insight that they were like, empathy is grace. Actually, is, this was their insight, and I felt like the circle felt like really filled with grace. There was that, it felt really deep, and it felt gorgeous. And we had that experience of where like 2 hours was gone just like that. And it was really, really, it really touched my heart deeply anyway. So yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, Michelle. And Sally, would you share, please?
Yeah. Well, yeah, as a planner, I'm just trying to figure out, like in a meeting with a group of people that want the exact opposite thing, and adopting that. The empathy circle, anyway, I think that there's some discussions that will need to be made to get to that point.
Thank you, Sally. And Graham, would you share, please?
Thank you, Larry. I enjoyed today. And I'm thinking of something that Tiffany said. There's always a sense of joy and excitement when new entrants are there. I still feel good when the empathy circle is with skilled and familiar participants. But when new ones are there, there is something that's communicated. There's a sense of surprise, I think, from them. And a sense of connection, and this is really good to feel. And so that's one of the things that I took away. And the other one is how faithfully this empathy circle sort of takes us to a safe space where we feel that we connect and that the connection is full of joy. And a third one, if I may, is I think this was from Michael, who said, how often do I leave others feeling as heard as I was? And so that's an important little thing that's going to niggle away at at some of my transactions with people. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Brad. And Anne, would you share, please?
You're muted.
Whoops. Thank you. That's my cough. I muted. Yeah, it was an interesting circle. It was good to hear from Mervyn, and who I haven't met before. And we were exploring, empathy and listening circles and nonviolent communication. And I think I learned quite a lot, or gave me food for thought, and other things to follow up. So there were some quite deep and interesting reflections from the members of my circle. So thank you all. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you, Anne. And Alexandria, would you share, please?
Yeah, so this was a really cool experience for me. It was like an interesting way to integrate my therapy skills into deliberation skills and conversations. And something that Dwayne said towards the end really resonated with me, that empathy is a movement. And as we learn to be empathetic with others and help them feel heard, they then have the skills and knowledge to go out into the world and help others feel heard. So kind of connecting all those ideas and figuring out how I can really integrate empathy into our deliberative practices at the CPD. Got a lot of really neat ideas to move forward with. So thank you all.
Thank you, Alexandria. And Mervyn, would you share, please?
Yeah, for me, the time did go quite fast, which was quite pleasant, good to know. I was sort of, yeah, was quite absorbed in some of the topics that were shared. And it was a nice group to be with. Thank you.
Thank you, Mervyn. And Dwayne, would you share, please?
Sure. For me, this is always a really, for me, positive experience for myself personally. Being the selfish person that I am, I'm always focused on taking care of myself first. And, I want to begin by saying, thank you to Alexandria, Claudia, Graham. It's always soothing having Graham in the group. He has this really gentle, caring, kind style. I'm also, again, I feel this sense of gratitude, towards Edwin and Bill and Lou and all the people who put this process together, and the opportunity that it creates for all of us. And I know I probably left a couple names out, but one of the really cool things is not just what takes place in the process, but the connections and activity that takes place as a part of this movement that happens afterwards. And a really good example is Alexandria was speaking about her experience working with children. And I was reminded about Bill and Bill's group on Thursday and what Bill has been doing to help, bring this to schools and encouraging those two to connect. And I'm sure there'll be many more connections as a result of this. Some of you will join us in the training, hopefully. And I just want to say thank you to people who helped made this possible. And again, thankful for the people for the group today, because I had a really amazing experience. And also thank you, Gabby, for making me a part of your team as well.
Thank you, Dwayne. And Deb, would you share, please?
I don't have much to add. I really enjoyed it as a newcomer, Tiffany. Hopefully I had some good juice flowing for everybody else. I guess, Dwayne, building on what you just said, I'm reflecting on how so many people think empathy is just something you have or you don't have. And this is a really concrete, simple structure and process to help people cultivate it. And I'm drawn to it. I feel excited about mulling over how I can take it forward. So thanks to all of you.
Thank you, Deb. And Claudia, would you share, please?
Yes, hi. Sorry, my webcam's not working today, but I appreciated being welcomed into the group and learning this method, and I felt so like cared for and listened to, and it was not what I expected, and it's so much better than I expected, in fact. So thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. And Gabby, would you share, please?
Sure. Yeah, it was a wonderful experience reconnecting again with the group and being able here to learn, to train again, and to exercise. And yeah, I'm thankful for you, Edwin, Lou, Bill, Larry, and Dwayne. That yeah, you put that together, and I'm celebrating the opportunity for being here again and experiencing it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Gabby. And yeah, I'll just share, I'm celebrating an empathy circle that is just, to me, so amazingly simple and profoundly impactful, truly, to human beings, for what's alive in us. I'm just amazed at it. So did I miss anyone? I certainly don't want to miss anyone. And
I think there's Sofnat has not been.
Oh, she did.
Yeah. Claudia?
Yeah, they did.
Did Claudia have a chance to share? Okay, great.
thank you. We never want to leave anyone out, that's for sure. Sometimes the screens jump around a little bit, and we don't want to have that feeling of, oh, we forgot someone. We never want to do that. All right, so back to you, Edwin.
Okay, thanks, Larry. So I'm going to put some links in here. There's a feedback form. If you can click on that right now, it'll open up a form that we'd appreciate if you fill that out. And there's a link there to the next training, the 12E that starts August 6th. So if you'd like to join us, you're welcome to join us in the 5-week training. That it'll be on Saturdays starting August 6th. So we'd love to have you join us in that training. And I also want to thank everyone from the National Coalition for Dialogue and Deliberation that came and took part in this. We're going to be doing this again. Yeah, we'll be doing this again next Saturday. So you're welcome to, that's on the conference, National Coalition for Dialogue Deliberation conference schedule. So you're welcome to come to that and bring your friends. And we also have, if you follow the links that we have there, you'll see that we have these intro cafes. There's another one on Thursday with Bill for teachers for how to bring empathy into schools. And then on Friday, Larry has an intro cafe like today. You're welcome to drop into that. And then, as I mentioned, Saturday, we have the next intro cafe. So I hope you'll come to that. And like to really thank all the facilitators. It just feels so good that we just put out a call. Today we're holding an empathy cafe. Facilitators come and help out. And just all these facilitators always show up. It's just really grateful for everyone sort of contributing and coming out and helping us out to facilitate. With the empathy circle, we've had, done groups where we divide into circles. We explain the process and divide into circles. But without a facilitator there, people just will kind of not stay in the process. And they'll just start, talking. So it's really good for the first time or two to have a facilitator in the group. So that's it for me. Bill or Lou, anything to add before we close?
No, go ahead, Bill.
Go ahead, Lou.
I was just going to express gratitude for people being interested in spreading this and learning this practice. And if people, I'll put my email in the chat if anyone wants to continue dialogue about this process or has questions about it that we didn't get a chance to answer. I'm happy to have you contact me.
Yeah, and I put the link to the my Thursday session, but also my email if you're a teacher or an educator or a parent, whatever, and you're interested in this process and introducing it into schools. That's what I'm doing. So, thank you.
Yeah, and if you see our calendar too, you'll see there's a lot of other circles held. I just forgot that Gabby, you're holding one too as well. So there's that one that's at a different time zone. So everybody's welcome to hold their own circles and put it on our calendar. So you see there's a lot of different events out there. So with that, we'd like to end with just some jazz hands, just get a nice portrait of everyone. So bye for now. And if the facilitators could stay back just for a quick debrief, I'd appreciate it. So bye, everyone. See
Bye,
you next
everyone.
time.
Bye. Thanks for coming.